This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results. Are you ready to feel the power?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Power Producers, where we are refining, redefining the sales game. Today, Kyle and I are privileged to have another Kyle with us. Again, I'm outnumbered. If it's not the beard, it's the name. We have Mr. Kyle Stevens from RSS Insurance in Chattanooga, Tennessee. What's cooking, Kyle?
Just trying to figure out this insurance game.
Yeah, well, you're doing a decent job of it, man, based off of what I know about your numbers anyhow, you know. Before we get too much into it and kind of what your journey looks like or has been in the insurance piece, why don't you just give everybody a quick rundown of sort of what your background is and what led you to your job at RSS now?
Perfect. Yeah, so I've been in insurance about 5 years total, current agency about 3 years. And before that, like Kyle, sold, or others sold ADP, payroll, and Total Source and PEO. So from that, I got to see insurance, how it worked, but also didn't like just getting paid on the first year's commission. So so I was like, how do I keep doing this? Oh, those guys can sell what I have and also everything else and take care of a client. So from that, jumped into insurance, moved from Tuscaloosa, went to Alabama, and moved to Chattanooga. Been here about 10 years and never looked back.
Cool deal. So Chattanooga's a cool town, man. That's like when I lived in Birmingham, that was a great weekend trip town for us. 2.5 hours away. Go hang out at Lookout Mountain. Go see Rock City and Ruby Falls. By the way, people, if you've seen them once, no real need to go back. But there's a lot of stuff to do there. I mean, I can only imagine that it's changed a lot. And I mean, shoot, man, it's probably been 20 years since I've been to Chattanooga. What I will tell you, though, is one of the most epic fails of my adult life happened at a place there. Is there a place, I think it's called Big River Brewery. Is it still there?
It's downtown.
Okay, so I went to Big River Brewery, and their shtick was they brewed their own root beer and cream soda.
Oh, boy.
Was not aware. Refills not free. So I was like Forrest Gump on his White House tour with the Dr. Peppers. I bet you I crushed a dozen root beers and I get my bill.
I would.
And they hammered me. They hammered me for like $5 a piece for these root beers or whatever. So yeah, that was my experience. But
sorry we did that to you.
Yeah, it's all right, man. I mean, cool aquarium there and everything.
I've only been
else.
through. I've never stopped really.
Well, that's 90% of the traffic on our roads, so we appreciate that. But yeah, it's come a long way as we've gotten some. I think a battery plant, the processing graphites. I forgot the name of it, but it's coming to Chattanooga. There's a lot of really interesting things here and coming. So.
Well, the cool part for you, too, though, is you're kind of located between 3 states, right?
Yep.
I mean, Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee sort of all meet right there, right outside of Chattanooga. So that gives you a little bit of flexibility as far as where you can go to write business. So
we're talking about that this morning. The end of my neighborhood, the end of the street is actually Georgia. There's not a house there because it's Georgia. So with Georgia having, double 2.5, 3 times the rates of Tennessee, and then Alabama being in the middle, it's a great place.
That's interesting.
So talk Total Source for a minute. I mean, what your time, and not necessarily specifically Total Source, but I mean, were you doing just the payroll stuff, or were you payroll and PEO both in your time with ADP?
So I did both. So first, I was there 4 years. First 2.5 years were payroll, and then I got licensed to do the 401k. So it was a pay K, what they call it. And then the last year and a half, I did Total Source. So I made the transition because, there wasn't much left, I guess you could say, for the small business, and I saw that was the route that people wanted to go. But being in Chattanooga and having Humana as the only carrier, no one wanted it. So that was a very quick exit. So, but I mean, it's great. If it wasn't in Chattanooga and there was another place to sell it, if it was in Nashville, I'd probably could still be in it, because the United, everything about it, it's a niche product that may only fit 5% of the industry.
Right.
But it's whoever fits it, if they want to take all that liability and burden off them, it is really a great product, as long as you know the cost that you're paying for it as well.
That's always what David and I have talked about. I mean, you have a very narrow market that you're trying to go for with the PEO stuff, and you've got one thing you're selling. Like, it's tough to pivot, or really there's nothing to pivot to. If you go in and you're talking something, with insurance, we can talk about the workers' comp, and then we can talk about auto and how they relate, and you can kind of go back and forth. And with PEO, there's really no opportunity for that.
Yeah, they've even kept relationships with others. They'll reach out every now and then and say, hey, we can't place this workers' comp. We do this. So yeah, I mean, I started selling it when the ACA came out. And so the two people I did sell were basically forced to find a solution. And I didn't see that continuing. So.
True.
Yeah, I mean, I think the PEO model is an interesting one. It's so much different everywhere else in the country outside of Florida. Like, right. We have so many flipping PEOs down here.
The birthplace of PEO.
It is, yeah. And so, how I explain it to people, I just tell them that in Florida, PEO equals cheap comp and payroll, because that's how people look at it. They're looking at it to go get a break on their workers' comp rates, get their payroll done. EPLI really doesn't matter to most of them.
Benefits.
Yeah.
A lot of it was benefits play, stuff that I ran into.
Yeah, but you were also at a PEO that was dealing with more white collar. I mean, when you get into some of these, like,
100%. Yeah, some of the ones that we deal with.
Garden variety PEOs down here. It's like, if you're a 3-man drywall operation, that's where you're going to go. Period. Sure. Like, you're not going to get coverage for your comp monoline anywhere. And so you don't want to go to the Joint Underwriters Association. So, the PEOs in Florida have figured it out, that they can price pretty much whatever they need to, make a ton of money on the workers' comp piece, because they have the flexibility of adjusting those rates to what they need them to be, and then call it a day. Completely different in other parts of the country, though. In other parts of the country, they're selling, value. They're selling the HR piece. They're selling even the benefits.
And we did that too, but it wasn't as prevalent as the stuff that you were just talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you there's probably a couple hundred PEOs just in Florida.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, from anywhere.
Almost in the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nuts. So I guess my question, Kyle, I mean, what you got really good training at ADP. I mean, we've done a couple of Shop Talk recordings already with Steven Sedlak, and we're going to do a couple more. He's another ex-ADP guy. Actually, ex-ADP guy, Keystone guy. I don't know if you know Steven or not, but work comp guy. Definitely somebody you should know. Yeah,
yeah, there you go.
The work comp effect, that's it. But you talk a little bit about ADP and how that prepared you for what you've experienced so far in the insurance world.
So the ADP's got it down to a science. I mean, if every rep was recruited away after 2 to 3 years, pretty much, unless you went into management. So that's what they want as well. So they are okay with training you. They're okay with doing that and having a medical device sales or going to insurance or whatever it may be, because again, you're only getting paid, first year's revenue, and then ADP gets the profit after that. So, but they've got it down to a science. I mean, my small business training initially, it's you go in, you drop in 10 places a day, you go see 2 CPAs a day, you go see 2 financial advisors a day, and then after that, if you're dropping in somewhere, you cloverleaf, the term they use around each of those places that you dropped in on, saying, hey, you're right here, can I set an appointment with you? So everything was down to a science. Everything was graded so well. Your manager, and you had to put it in Salesforce. So if it wasn't in Salesforce, it didn't exist.
Exactly.
So
The Cloverleaf thing, back up to that for a second. So you're talking about you're dropping in on a business, and so you'll just pop into a few that are around there that may be kind of in your small business wheelhouse that would
Correct.
make sense. Gotcha.
Yep. So they had, I mean, if you did the method that they had, you would succeed. So, but I think the biggest thing that I didn't start as fast as a lot of other reps because I tried to build kind of longer term relationships, which I think has helped me on insurance. So I tried to build the CPA relationships, the banker relationships, the attorney relationships, whereas most reps would come in, prospect, sell, get the low hanging fruit, and then they have nobody to refer them, or they just be worked, done because they're so tired of everything. So I think that really building those relationships, but because I've had to change as well, I've had to change how I sell, because it was a very transactional sell versus a very relationship and a very, very problem centric selling currently. So there was a lot good to it. Basically, it's just the foundations of knowing what you need to do and doing it, and then being able to grade those things if they're working or not.
So talk about that for a second, because it is a totally different sale. What had to change for you?
So biggest thing is, just kind of reviewing, because even in my first experience with commercial insurance, it was a very still transactional sell. The way I was trained was, get in, quote it, hope that you'd get it, and then maybe you did, maybe you didn't. So I think it was having to see that didn't work in insurance first, and then really diving in. Keystone's got a lot of great, before we got into Killing Commercial, and then our agency, one of our agency owners, David, is really the biggest reason why I came here, because his relationship, I've never seen someone relationship wise sell things, know the amount. So it's just a different. After I lost enough deals, let's put it that way, going in, and then the incumbent basically matching my price because I had zero relationship. After getting that happen enough, something had to change, and that's how we looked into other things of how do you dethrone, I guess you could say, how do you drive that wedge into that instead of just being a price play.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, I think one of the things that I think a big mistake that producers make when they're first starting out, I mean, you identified it. It's a matter of going out and just writing the low-hanging fruit and getting volume to come through. And there's a couple of issues with that. The first one is they write everything under the sun, and it's not, business that they really want to write. If you step back and look at it and say, is this ideally who we want to represent or whatever else? The answer 90% of the times, no, it's not. We're just writing what we have to because we need to validate. But the other piece is something that I've always done, and I think that it's a lost art to a certain degree, and that is building out your network, man. I mean, to me, I have always said I don't want to make 10 phone calls to get an appointment. I want to make one phone call and get 10 appointments. And I can do that if I've got the right CPA or the right lawyer or any number of other people. BNI and networking groups certainly have their place. They don't translate to middle market commercial very well. They translate to the lower end of middle market, but it's really more
it's small business play.
What's the relationships that you get out of those? That, like, I'm in a BNI group and I have gotten my 2 niches from there, but it's been because of the 2 relationships or the referrals I got. And one of my ground delivery, my delivery drivers or delivery contractors. The HVAC guy in my previous group, had a delivery contract, and from there, wrote it, made the introductions, and have gotten 10 plus contractors. So it's not as much is it, those things good as even there if you build the relationships out they can do well.
Yep, I agree. I mean, it's not you're not going to get rich off of writing the BNI stuff, but if you can, get maybe one deal a year in there that's middle market or turns into something fruitful, well then not only have you, paid for your dues or whatever for the year, but you can kind of work that relationship, moving forward, and that's ultimately the goal.
Yeah, I mean, I've probably over 4 years of my group, I've written probably 120 to 150,000 in revenue, out of it. So I mean, but again, it was a lot of time I invested. I actually became the president, of the group. I was the VP. I put in the time and built the relationships, went to everything else. So it wasn't just, show up and get referrals. It was, who do I need to network with? Who's going to be able to help me, and who do they know? Just like being out, nothing changes with BNI. It's just, you just got to put the time in as of everything else.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've still got relationships today from people that I mean, I was in a networking group. It wasn't BNI, but even like my first year that I had my license, I bet you a half dozen people from 20 years ago I still have a relationship with, where we refer business back and forth. I think that the thing I like about those networking groups is the discipline that they have. Right. I think that, look, I'll call it what it is. I think some of it's over the top, but I also understand that if I look at the average demographic of a person who gets a job in sales, they probably need that level of discipline in order to make it work right. Right. But I mean, my biggest problem always has been, I think that the framework is good. I think it all boils down to who the leadership is of each one of these groups or operations. Because I mean, and again, I'm using BNI, but I mean, it literally could be any of the leads groups that are out there. It boils down to who the leadership is and how much they're willing to hold people accountable. I'm not a big fan of like the rah-rah, all of that stuff. Like I have a hard time with that, as does Kyle. I know that's not his favorite part. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if you're in the right group and you have the right leadership that's holding people accountable, that works.
I want to back up to something you said, and maybe you can shed some light on it for some of the listeners. You said that you don't want to make 10 calls to get one appointment. You'd like to make one and get 10. So obviously that alludes to having good channel relationships and developing those partners. So what do you look for when you're meeting with somebody? How do you start that? What does that process look like for you? I know it's not just an immediate thing like we've just been talking about. It takes time to massage those things, but maybe you shed a little bit of light on that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, truthfully, this is more difficult for me now than it was back earlier in my career, for nothing other than geography, because I'm not in the West Shore district anymore. Where
you're not doing happy hours on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday,
Monday through Friday.
Right.
But I mean, I used to, like, I always made it a point. I never ate lunch by myself. Like when I first got into the game, I was in a part of town where I had access to all the big law firms, all the big accounting firms, and I always would reach out. And so for me, at this point, I think my answer is twofold. Number one, I do think if you're a new producer, to get used to that discipline and to begin building your network, I do think that you should be in a leads group at least to start out with. I think that gives you a good framework. And then what I did was I basically just said, hey guys, why are we paying all this money to be part of a leads group? We could just go start our own amongst ourselves. We're already having this and we could save all the money. And that's actually kind of what happened, is we just created our own little informal relationships. I think that that's a good place to start. But for me, one of the best places you can start, and this can happen literally with the very first account that you write, you need to interview your clients. Find out who their people are. Who are they using, right? Who are the service providers? Who's your accountant? Who's your banker? Who's your attorney? Talk to me about where you get your office supplies, your payroll, all of that. And, by the time you have that person as a client, notice I didn't say prospect. By the time you have them as a client, you have the ability, I mean, they're going to know who you are personally, professionally, who you're going to gel with and who you're not. And my theory with that has always been that if I ask them about a person that they buy payroll from and they're a $50,000 revenue account to me, I like my chances that payroll person's going to be in other accounts the same size is what I like to write. And so if they're a natural fit there, then my client can simply say, oh yeah, you know what, my payroll guy's the best, or my payroll lady's the best. You'd hit it off with them great. I'm going to ask him, can you set up a meeting? Can you make an introduction? I don't necessarily need them to go to a lunch meeting to introduce this, but at least get a quick email and then go have lunch and decide if this is somebody that I have the ability to work with. But again, listen, I start every single one of these conversations the same way. Well, I kept saying phone call, but if I'm having lunch with somebody, we're not on our cell phones talking across the table to each other. I start every conversation the same way, and it is, tell me what I can do to help you build your business. Right? I want to go in and immediately tell them, look, I have the ability to help you. Tell me how I can help you. I want to, because
I think
if I
so
help
many
you, you're going to
people
be more open to helping me.
I think so many people do it the opposite way and then start just saying all the things that they're trying to look for that they can get out of the other person, and that's just a completely backwards way to do it. I will say that your point about asking them and I've seen you do this in meetings and picked up on it early on, but you're not just coming out and asking them, say, hey, by the way, who's your accountant, who's your banker? Like it comes up naturally in conversation based on things that we're talking about. It's not, you're just asking them point blank, like the question we talked about a few weeks ago when you're saying, so tell me your pain points. Like, no.
Yeah.
Tell
me where you're feeling pain. No,
right.
But I mean, you know what? Look, it's an easy thing to do. Like, one of my number one tricks, by the way, people, I'm getting ready to give you a really good one.
Here we go.
Yeah. Just name an accounting firm and ask them if that's who they use. Doesn't matter if it is or not, because they're going to say no. Say, hey, just out of curiosity, you don't happen to use so-and-so for your accounting, do you? And
no, we use this person.
No,
they're going to tell you. We used to do the
such.
same thing with the office supplies. I would walk in and say, you guys just go to Office Depot, right? And they either say yes or no, and if they didn't, they'd tell me where they went.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, I think that's one way you can do it, because then they're like, well, wait a minute, that's a pretty big accounting firm. You're connected with them. Gives you can actually ask a question of the wrong person and gain some credibility with it. Because if you're dealing with like one of the big accounting firms in town and you ask them if they're with them, they're like, oh wow, no, we're not. But if you're affiliated with them in some way, that they look at you differently. But I think that's one way to do it. But I have a form that I created that's basically like a client profile. It's actually something we distribute in Killing Commercial to everybody when they go through the modules that they can use, and it's got a series of things on there that they can ask to help with this and several other aspects of it. But it only really works. I don't go in with that form and then just ask the questions and then write the answer down. Sometimes when you're going to find that out, you need to look at like 2 or 3 things. I mean, I think this is actually really, really good feedback here. Think of 2 or 3 things that you want to get out of that person. Like, if you want to know who their attorney is, where they're getting their payroll, and who the benefits broker is or whatever, okay, think about how you're going to handle that in conversation and know these are the things I want to know. I don't have to have a form, but I'm going to ask questions around that. So, if you're going in to meet with somebody and their renewals in April 1, or, corporate returns are a month later, right? May 15th. But say they have a May 1 renewal, you can be like, man, I bet you have a lot going on with your taxes. That's crazy. And boom, now and say, I didn't reach out to you originally, on January, because I know you're probably going through your benefits renewal at that point. Are you still with so-and-so? Because you can find that out from the free ERISA website for the 5500s, right? So you can have that information going in as well. And, you can just ask those questions conversationally, and you don't even need to do it successively. You just boom, 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 right in a row, as you're going through. And when you walk out of the meeting, you make a note of that, you put it in your records, and now you know who that is. And the next time you talk with that person, maybe you have 1 or 2 things you want to get the answer to. You don't have to get it all at one time. But,
right.
For me, I've always been the believer, as much as we tried to make this an official role at Florida Risk as far as channel partnership development. We created a role for that clown. I think that's the biggest way that you can build your network, man. I mean, to this day, I will tell you that the level of cold call activity that I have to do is nil. I don't, because at this point, my clients refer me business and my network refers me a ton. And, it's a great feeling to know, but it goes back to what we talk about in terms of being a 5-tool player. Somebody asked me one time, what are the 5 tools? I can rattle off 5 tools, but I can take any process that we have inside the industry and also say you have to be a 5-tool player around that.
In this,
right?
Yeah.
And I think that getting leads and how you solicit people, there are definitely multifaceted approaches to what you need to do. You need to cold call, you need to telemarket, you need to email, you need to direct mail,
Social.
you need to have inbound stuff from social. You need to have the channel partners that are referring business to you. And until you maximize, the wheels of the spoke, you're not going to be getting the kind of referrals and inbound leads that you want. But if you can focus on that, it's a long play. Like, I never quit doing that. If I have somebody comes to me and says, hey, I've got an accounting firm over in St. Pete, and I've been following some of the stuff that you're doing, and I really think you'd be a great fit for us to refer some of our clients to. I'd love to sit down and talk to you about it. Yeah, I'll go talk to them about it. It doesn't mean that I am going to be a good fit. We need to figure that out. And I just think that so many times when we get that meeting, we're not gracious, right?
Yeah.
We're not gracious. Hey, thanks for taking time out to come have lunch with me. Really appreciate it. Obviously I want to talk about business development for both of us, but I don't ever come in assuming that you're just going to automatically refer business to me. But what I can control is whether or not I refer business to you. So tell me a little bit about your company and how I can help. Done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that should be the way that you start that every time. I mean, if you just come in guns blazing looking for stuff for you, that's an immediate turnoff for me. If somebody wants to meet with me and they're coming in just telling me how, how they can get business from me, and it's not a two-way street, then that's not the way to do it.
So Kyle, talk to me, man. What was the strategy when you were at ADP? I mean, that's what ADP is known for, in my opinion, is going in and networking with CPAs. I mean, Kyle's wife's a district manager for them, so I hear the stories from him. We've had people in here that are ex-ADP, and it seems like that's the play every single time, is going and networking with the accountants, because that's a lot of times who has the influence on that. So, like, if you were going to go open up a CPA relationship, what would you typically do to do that?
So, from ADP perspective, or just currently?
So you are okay. Thanks, Kyle. You just ruined it because no, but I mean that's the natural. That's the progression. I'm interested in like in your ADP days. How were you trained to go in and do that? How did you open that relationship, and what's different about how you do that today versus when you were with them?
So I had a number one is I wasn't smoking hot and a girl because before that was who was in the territory. So I knew I had to be a little bit different getting appointments. I don't know if that was sexist or not, but I didn't have the ability to get certain appointments that the previous person did. So with Chattanooga and East Tennessee is a little bit weird. A lot of CPAs actually want to do payroll. So I had to come in at a different way because I would come in and say,
so what were you doing? You were probably trying to sell them on their white label product.
Correct. Yep. So that's actually how I did it. Actually convinced my very first CPA. He had just moved from a different larger firm to his own. And I was like, hey, you need to be different. You need to have another service. And I convinced him to go to the ADP's wholesale product, even though he didn't want to. Also knew I wasn't going to get referred, but he ended up making a ton of money off of it. Probably brought 40 or 50 clients on and charged 2 to 3 times what ADP was charging him. So, and then he sold it, and it was a very large cash thing to, I think, Paychecks to another payroll company. So the wholesale was big here. I didn't have any acquisitions. They really focused on trying to purchase, the payroll business out of CPA offices. But the biggest thing was just, even if you do it, let's get you signed up on wholesale, or if you just do payroll on your own, like let us handle the big ones. So even if, that one that did the 30, 40, 50 clients, they would give us anybody over, say, 50 employees, because they couldn't handle it, or they didn't have the manpower, or they needed to be on the larger ADP technology instead of the small business for the ACA, the reporting, the benefits, and things of that nature. And then some of them we would even pitch, going to the total source or going to PEO, we would actually try and get the CPA firm set up on the PEO so they could see the benefits of it, get the, and then they can even mention it to their clients. Say, hey, I'm on this special platform. This is a great thing. It's helped us, attract, retain the best employees. Maybe you should look at this as well. So from that, it's just building, like for me, it's just when I go in now, it's like, how do I help? How do I protect? How do I be a resource for the CPAs? So then it was giving them material, bringing extra value, making them look good. And also, like, a CPA doesn't need to be doing payroll. Unless they want to use it as a loss leader. So for most CPAs, it's like, hey, we do payroll, let's get that. And they're hooked on one thing. But otherwise, most of them didn't make money of it, and they can bill other services higher than what payroll costs. So just trying to convince them that they're worth more than just doing payroll, and why we should take that off their plate. Same thing with their clients. Like, why are you reviewing insurance policies? Why are you reviewing these things? Are you the expert? Let us come in and help you look good to your clients as well.
So the agency that you're with now, what are you guys going after? Are you going after similar stuff that you were, had relationships with before, or is it completely different? You mentioned a niche earlier.
So we're all over the place still. I mean, there's definitely some of the guys that we have 10 to 15 agents running around. But for me, actually, I was going to bring this up as, David, kind of how you got started is you found the carrier and built out, what they wanted, where I kind of did the opposite. So when I first started, Guarantee was actually pretty much kind of in trouble. So I closed a home care account. So not the home health, but just the Visiting Angels franchise. And they're with Guarantee Insurance. So saved them 30% easily. And so I was like, oh, what's going on here? I think Guarantee might be in trouble. So I pulled off of Data Lister, pulled a list of all the Guarantee clients I could find in Tennessee and just marketed those. And that's how I found, good space in human services accounts, home care, because that's pretty much what they wrote up here. So just different ways like that. So, with Guarantee going out, I wrote a number of human services, home care. So that's a niche. Then from the delivery contractor, we're actually looking at hiring. I reached out to an old FedEx manager. He worked at some of the facilities. So we're looking at actually bringing on an ex FedEx employee so that can bring additional value. Then I can just say, hey, we're calling about your insurance. And say, let's look at your FedEx things, help consult with you guys as well. So that's really it. Just seeing, doing one thing, if it's the delivery contractors, the human services, or even I've got one client at my old agency. He just kind of handed it to me. They do event and party rentals down in Georgia. It's a $5,000 new business account. So here you go. I can, have time for it. And then from him, taking care of him, I've written over $1 million in premium, of event rental, other companies, just from being with him, sitting with him, taking care of him. And he likes to, take care of the people that he refers and works with him. So I'll go sit with him at least monthly, drive down to Atlanta, and we'll just go through who can I go talk to. He sends a text with both of us included, or makes a call right there, 2 or 3 calls every time I'm there. And I at least write 2 out of 3 were his referrals, because they're so solid. And because I know what I'm doing, or I've learned that space. So that's the biggest thing. It's really, just making calls. And I think you were saying, David, you don't have to make any cold calls. But now, normally I want the cold calls to be cold calling on my delivery contractors, or cold calling in the party rental space. So it's not just, hey, I want to help with your workers' comp. It's like, hey, have you checked your inland marine lately to see if it's on a miscellaneous floater, to make sure that items you rent from other people are actually covered if there's, if it gets blown over. So very specific things that get them thinking, instead of just, hey, can I help with your workers' comp? So it's been fun.
Cool. So what do you think the biggest surprise was for you as you came into the insurance industry?
From going from ADP, you only have to get paid. You only really have to focus on new business. So where insurance is new business and your current business. So for me, managing that relationship and managing those clients and keeping them happy and doing the things I said I would do. We get busy, and when we bring them on, we promise, hey, we'll do this, this, and this. So actually doing that, actually time management. So before it was, okay, I'm just going to prospect all day, or I've got 2 meetings, I'm going to see these people, where, that quickly as you grow your book of business can get crowded out. And new business gets a lot of prospecting and networking just gets so much harder. And I think that goes back to, writing the right kind of business. The last few months I've given up, I've transferred kind of 10 to 15, maybe even 20% of my business of small business to kind of our house or small business, units, because it's like, hey, if I can easily go replace those with middle market accounts in probably a few months, and it's going to be less headaches. I'm going to have less time and be able to actually, service the clients that I do have better. Kind of like you say, David, look at a boardroom and a seat, the open seat. That's really helped me. Do I want some of my clients in that seat or at the board table? The answer is no. So it's really thinking about that and who can I service, but also it's doing a disservice to my clients. Or even the small ones that I bring on, I can't give them the amount of time needed that maybe an agent that focuses on that can. So that's been the biggest thing, is just time management and figuring out how to balance, new business, old business, and keeping everyone happy.
Cool. What do you think the most rewarding thing's been? And you can't say residual income.
Keeping businesses in business, I'd have to say. I had like the Nashville tornado that came through March of 2020. I'd just taken over the client, completely changed his business income, changed how his policy was written. I begged him. I was like, please, let me do this. Let's change this to a limit. Let's get your co-insurance down, whatever it may be, because I knew he was underinsured. And then I think that was in, February. And a month later, the tornado wipes his building out. And we hit the limits, but also it was, he was in an event rental company, and it was COVID, in the middle of COVID, or COVID had just started. And so he was fortunately one of the luckiest event rental companies probably in the nation, that got hit by a tornado. But if I wouldn't have written the policy correctly, he would have been, in the same boat as everybody else as well. So that's, I think the coolest thing is just having situations like that. I don't sleep as well at night when storms come through because of that, but I can, because I know I've written it to the best of my ability, and I know what I'm doing. I mean, just the amount of business income that I see that's wrong, or, I had one the other day, they were going to get a 93% co-insurance penalty if something actually happened on their business income. And just learning, constantly learning. It's fun, and really protecting people's businesses and their livelihood.
When you see an error like that on the business income, how do you bring that up to them?
So that one, it was, I was looking at everything all together. It was kind of going through it, and I said, hey, do you guys, what if, a fire, a tornado, or what, something knocks your building out, like how long is it going to take to get you guys back up? You just kind of get the details there, but it's like, and we'll try and kind of get to a number just quickly of like, oh, you'll probably need $3 million to get back up and running. It's like, well, do you think the current $28,000 check that you'll get would be enough, or what would that go towards to get you guys going? It's like, what are you talking about? Oh my gosh, so it's like, well, currently you've got, because of the way it's written, you'd get a check for $28,000 if something happens. So do you mind if we fix that for you, so you actually have a business? Then we can dive in, go through the business income worksheet, and really get them properly covered.
Nice.
So yeah, business, and that's I don't know, I've really tried to learn, like right now I'm really trying to dive into claims and workers' comp, and like these delivery contractors. I just took over one because I was like, hey, we're going to help you with claims, we're going to do this, we're going to whatever it may be. And he's like, I've never heard of any of this before. So it's like, took it from an agent that had it for 20 the dad for 20 years and never talked about any of the things to really help with claims. Go to have them go to a nonprofit. And I was looking at the experience mod. I quoted it 3 years ago, and I think it was a 0.67 or 0.69. And I just pulled it up, and it's a 1.0 this year. So over the last 4 years, they've trended from a 1.67, 0.69, 0.78 to a 1.0. And, their policy's gone from 30,000 to 75,000, over the last 4 years over small claims. I mean, the 2 claims, I think, but most of it was, if they would have not paid indemnity, it might be a 0.8 or 0.78 right now from what we're calculating.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. It's kind of like, I don't think I ever get sick of the fact that I can walk in and tell somebody how much indemnity impacts their workers' comp, knowing it's the first time that they've ever heard it.
Right.
And then just watching the reaction on their face, and then being able to take a mod report and show them the difference between here's what it is, here's what it could have been, and then correlating both of those to the minimum mod overall. I mean, for me, if I look at it, the money in what we do is great. You'd be hard pressed to find another industry where you could make as much money and have as quick of a ramp up period and be in as much control as you are of your destiny in the insurance industry. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. I love money. I prefer to have lots of it. Like to buy things, maybe a little too much. And so that piece is great, but for me, I really get the actual career satisfaction out of being able to go in and tell somebody something they've never heard before, knowing that I am unequivocally 100% correct in what I'm saying, and then being able to back that up by delivering on what we promise once they place their trust in us. So I think that's probably the truth in every sales profession that I've ever had. But to your point, man, I mean, most of my clients, the overwhelming majority, like high 90 percentile, are going to take my advice and not ever push back.
Right.
They're going to realize that, I'm giving them the advice because this is what you should be doing. A lot of them are on service fees, so the premium isn't going to matter, to me from a compensation standpoint, and they know that. So they all automatically take my advice at face value for that. But I have a client right now that I got into basically a knockdown drag out, and he gave me the standard answer of, I can't afford to pay any more for my property insurance. When I got this account, they were underinsured by several $100,000 just on the building and the business personal property. They had no business income at all. None.
Jeez.
And this is a $4 million a year company, almost $5 million a year in sales. And so I told them, you need to raise your building to this, the way that your equipment is installed in the building based on the weight and the fact that it's permanently attached should not be classified as business personal property. It should be under the building code. And that's a much cheaper rate. So we're going to get you some pricing efficiency, and we're going to move it up to where it should be. I'm not telling you it's going to be free, but we're going to, minimize the damage by actually classing this stuff as building, because that's what it should be classified as. And you need 1.5 million in business income at a bare minimum on a 1/3 monthly limit of indemnity. I always ask for a third. Very rarely do I get it. But I look at it this way. I need my clients to get back up and running as quick as they possibly can. If I'm going to have a monthly limit of indemnity on business income, I want them to be able to front load that with as much money as they possibly can so they can get back up and running. It should ultimately cost the insurance company less. It seems like more and more carriers are wanting to hang out at 1/6 or not offer anything other than a co-insurance option anyhow. I ended up selling him on the deal. It cost him about $15,000 a year more in premium than what he had prior. When Hurricane Irma came through a couple years back, absolutely shredded his building. Shredded it. $1.8 million claim. They got paid every penny of it.
There you go.
If they would not have listened, if they would not have let me push back. And truthfully, if I wouldn't have been patient enough with them, I could have just said, you know what, go find somebody else to represent you. This is how we do it here, and you either comply or you don't. You know, this is somebody that I've known for a long time, have a long-term relationship with personally, like all the way back to my junior high days. And so I could push him a little bit. And when when that claim happened, he sent me a letter. He's like, it's not lost on me that I didn't want to pay this and that you argued with me and you told me because I told him, I said, it makes me sick to my stomach to know that I want what's right for your company more than you want what's right for your company. And he said, you did. He said, you wanted what was right for me more than I did, and I get that now. He said, I'm so glad that we made the decision because I'd have been out of business. I don't know what else you could possibly do for somebody outside of that to make you feel any better, man. I mean, agents shouldn't get their gratification. It's a certain type of gratification you get when you get a commission check. But the real gratification comes when you know that you did your job well and you know that you got your client out of a hot mess, or when they got into a bad claim situation that the insurance did exactly what it was supposed to do. And I don't know that that'll ever change for me. I think that will always be the number one driver. I love writing the new business. I love getting paid. But I like the fact, and it's not just that we take care of them. It's when they take the time to acknowledge, hey, look, you know what? I didn't want to believe you. You pushed me into a situation that I needed to be pushed. And as a result, I'm better off for it. That's the ultimate for me. Outside of being an agency owner at this point, it's like being a dad watching your kids succeed. I'm happy. I'm truly happier for Kyle or Raphael or whoever goes out and writes a new policy. That's huge gratification for me as an agency owner, because these are guys who had no experience at all that have come in and trusted me to teach them this stuff, and they're out and making waves in the real world, making money.
Yep. No, I 100% agree.
And do you have to pick your battles? Because, like, I would say, like, my Nashville, guy, I got him to raise his business. I guess I battled on what was necessary. So I got him to raise the business income. I got him to fix that. But then, pitched or proposed, like, hey, we need to increase your building limit. He had it in a different entity. He had it, I think, 5 million something. And I said, hey, this probably needs to get closer to 7 million. He, said no. And then, so that, was a check that he could have received. I walked in at 9 a.m. after the tornado hit and said, don't say anything. You did your job. So he knew, it's like, look, he took a gamble. We got everything protected. That was the most important. He's, stayed in business, but he didn't get as much, revenue off the building, but he still was okay, because of the most important was taken care of.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing, man. Sometimes you do have to pick your battles, and it becomes a multi-year process. Sometimes there really is no money, right? I mean, I can easily force somebody to pay $15,000 to $20,000 more than they were paying for their insurance, but they may truly not have it. Part of that's knowing, okay, is my client just giving me a hard time because they don't want to spend the money, or are they giving me a hard time because they can't spend the money? And there's a big difference there. And so if that's the case, you have to, I mean, this is where relationships are made for forever. You have to have that conversation with your client and say, look, man, I'm on your side of the table. I don't want there to be friction. Let's talk about what's going on. This stuff's all important, but let's organize it in order of importance and agree on it. And you obviously need to come up with a plan in a way that you can document that you both agreed on that plan. Right? Because the last thing you want to do is go in and say, well, I think business income is the most important, instead of building your business, your building limits, and then something happens and it doesn't have a business income issue, but it affects the building, and now they've got to come out of pocket for money, or they have a nasty coinsurance penalty because you didn't adjust it the way you were supposed to. You don't want that blowing back on you if the real reason was because you guys agreed on something. And so I think it's important too that as you're having these conversations, come up with a game plan. Sometimes it's okay, if you've got a company that's growing, it's strapped or whatever else, it might be a 2 or 3 year process to say, these are the things that need to happen. Here's when we're going to do these things over the course of the next couple of years. But ultimately, we need to be in this position. I'm not saying you need to do that every time, but in an extenuating circumstance, you're going to run into it, man. I mean, very few companies are going to be appreciative of you walking in and telling them that they're going to have to pay more.
Right.
And so I do think you pick your battles, and I think you come up with a realistic plan. Cool. Kyle, what else you got, man? Kyle Houck, what else you got for Kyle Stevens? Anything? Before we let him go?
I mean, I was gonna. I know you have a few books behind you there, and we talked about the work comp effect, but I wanted to see if there was anything else that you were reading out there that you think might be beneficial for other producers to get their hands on.
Well, currently, so I've just got a new Kindle since I misplaced it, as I do with everything. But the book I've been trying to read is was it Eat the Frog.
Yeah.
So, but that's the book I've been trying to read, which is very how do you say? I think our lights went off.
Yeah, you went dark on us.
I don't know if y'all can see anything, but yeah. So that's the book I've been trying to get going. So I'm excited to read that book because that's really one of my challenges. Actually, one of my goals for today was if I meet with a client, if I meet with someone, I need a 24-hour turnaround time of getting either the prospect information to our team, or if it's changes or whatever it may be, so I can just get it out of my mind. Because that's the thing, is just making sure that my brain has been filled so much with just so much, going after so much, but just trying to focus in just on the delivery contractors, just on the event rental companies, instead of just driving by. I think every if you look at my phone, out of 10 pictures, 9 are sides of trucks, 10, things of that nature, and one's of my kids. So I really need to trim that down, because I think I've done it for 5 years now. I don't think I've looked through it one time probably,
Right.
or gone back. So it's really just, for me, that's just been the focus, getting things done, the time management, because at the end of the day, that's, if you don't have enough time, you're not going to be able to do anything. So if you don't have enough prospects, you don't have enough time, or you waste that much time, I don't.
Yeah, you know what my problem is? My problem is never that I don't have enough time. My problem is that I misappropriate time.
Correct. Yep.
I have to put things on my calendar, and I joke about it all the time. I tell people I'm like Ron Burgundy with his teleprompter when it comes to my calendar. If it's on my calendar, I do exactly what it tells me I'm supposed to do, just like he read everything that was on the teleprompter. And as long as I can get it on my calendar, it's going to get done. My issue is when that meeting cancels and now all of a sudden I've got a block of my time freed up in the middle of the day. What am I doing with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing to keep myself out of going down rabbit holes on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever else? And so that's kind of my deal, man. I've gotten so much better about time management and planning and just getting into a routine. Because again, I think a lot of salespeople are the same way. Some of it may be due to the fact I played ball as long as I did and having superstitions and stuff that way. But I've got my same routine every day, every week. I mean, like literally down to the minute. I do the same stuff all the time. And then, my day is obviously planned by my calendar. But I mean, why do you think? I mean, I'll let either one of you answer. Why do you think that salespeople struggle so much with time management? To me, I just don't think I think it's a lack of discipline. I don't think it's a lack of ability or a lack of tools.
Yeah, I'd say that. I mean, most of us, I think, even me personally, if it's ADD or ADHD or just, having so much, I think 40%, probably are diagnosed or could be diagnosed. But that's the thing, is just, it's discipline. For me, it's, if I don't know the steps, or if I don't look at it, if it seems tough, I'm going to get on Facebook, or I'm going to go research something instead of, submitting this or doing this. So it's more of just getting into it, doing something we don't want to do, paperwork or whatever it may be, than to be able to do the fun things of closing deals or meeting with clients and doing those first. So it's not the time, it's just a commitment and just getting into it and doing it, for me at least.
Well said.
Cool. Well, what have we missed, man? I mean, we've been going almost an hour. I want to be respectful of your time. What haven't we covered that you think everybody needs to hear about Kyle Stevens?
I would just say, one thing I really love about clients and just kind of what we do is just really actually, I was going to say this earlier, is just, have a passion, like the human, I think my most passion, and actually going to a conference, next month about it, is human services, the developmental, people that help, people with developmental disabilities. When I was growing up, I think it was elementary, middle school, one of my best friends had Down syndrome, so it's, for me, that passion of, where is Neil? What is he, what's people are there for him as he's in adulthood. So I've been able to take that and just our friendship and just what, I've lost connection with him because I'm from he's in a different city, but how do these adults that should be treated the same, these people are giving them their lives and making, minimum wage. How can I support them and make their jobs easier, get them more money back in their budget, but also, protect them so they can keep doing what they do every day that I wish I could, but financially can't because of, having to support my family. So that's about it. I hope I really been trying to bike ride a lot more. So I got my 4-year-old's finally gotten his pedal bike down, and my 2-year-old's gotten started on his balance bike. So our family neighborhood outings have gotten a lot faster and more fun and dangerous, though.
There you go. Well, listen, people, if you don't know Kyle Stevens, you should, because the guy's clocking 150 plus in new business revenue every year. And he's somebody you need to pay attention to and somebody you should follow because he does have it figured out. And it's not, again, uncommon from what I consider to be my ideal prototype, somebody who went to work for one of the payroll companies, got that Fortune 500 sales training, and then came into our industry to make waves and make a huge splash. So I'm going to wrap it up, man. Kyle, tell them how they can get a hold of you, because I just told them all they need to know you now. So I know that you're very active on LinkedIn and some other places. I'll let you roll with it, and then we'll close her down.
Perfect. So phone number, if anybody has any questions, text me, 423-838-9998, or email is kstevens with a PH, kstevens at rssins.com, on LinkedIn, Facebook. And after this podcast, my goal is to get more active and push myself out there more. So
cool.
Yeah. And on Tinder, what was, I'm just kidding.
That was, yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool deal. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. I think that your experience is valuable. I think we talked about a lot of good stuff today, man. So I look forward to this airing and making you a cartoon, my friend. So
Excited about that.
There you go.
Good deal. Well, I hope you have a good week, everybody. We will catch you next time. See ya.
You've been listening to the Power Producers Podcast. You can follow Killing Commercial Insurance on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our book, The Extra 2 Minutes, and our website, killingcommercial.com.